Good morning. Welcome to our final week of this certification meetup, this certification group. I'm really excited to be here with you all, although I'm a little bit sad that it's kind of coming to a close. But I have some really interesting stuff to talk about today. And of course, as always, this coronavirus, COVID-19, whatever you want to call it, is going to be certainly a part of it. So hopefully that will work out okay for you all. I know I personally get sick and tired of talking about it so much, but for many, many people all around the world, it is such a big, big deal. I think of our friends over in India, on such strict lockdown, and I think Italy and Spain are pretty similar from what I hear. So it's massive, massive effects to so many people's lives. And unfortunately, thankfully, it's not a huge number, but there are some people who are not making it through this disease. So my heart also goes out to those families, the loved ones there as well. Good morning, Ijaz Ruggiero. Good to see you on. Manu Prasad, Mikel. Very good to see you all on this morning. We're gonna wait just like a minute or so more before we jump in. But I was thinking we'll see. But I was wondering or thinking that there could be more people coming on this morning simply because we're all locked inside here. So here in Kansas City, we are under what's called stay-at-home orders. It's not, I guess, called a lockdown. It might be called a soft lockdown. So people are encouraged to stay home, although places like home improvement stores are still open. The police are not like shutting down roads or anything like that. So Niha, come on and welcome. We're going to be having a really interesting meeting this morning. I'm going to share some interesting things that I came across here recently, some statistics that I think will be helpful in preparing you all to pass this test. So that's my goal here to do that this morning. So again, this is our last meeting of our certification meetup. And so with that, we're going to jump in and get started. All right, so I would like to start out with some shout outs for those who have successfully passed the test. It's one person. So we've had a lot of conversation in our Slack channel simply because there's the test centers that have been shut down. And as I'm working through this is all a work in progress for me. This is all I'm learning through this process as well. But I'm coming to see that the internet connection needs to be better than I originally thought for taking tests at home. So unfortunately, that means that there's been a good number who wanted to take it, and I think we're ready to take this test, but it has not happened yet. So with that in mind, I would be interested to know, so please drop into our live chat, the comments here. Please drop into those comments and the live chat when you are planning to take your test. So what date, provided that, once this whole thing blows over, hopefully soon, that when are you going to be ready to take this test? So I will be very interested in, good morning, David, come on in. I'd be very interested to know that simply because I'm also adjusting the deadline for this. So here's my thinking. We could say there's no deadline. And then, of course, welcome, Vish. Come on in, too. It's good to have you here. We could say that there's no deadline. And if there's no deadline, then nobody gets T-shirts. I want to be able to send out T-shirts. So we have to put on some type of deadline. The challenge is nobody knows how this whole thing is going to blow over. Plus, there's definite economic impacts to this. And that's where I sent out an email this week. For those of you that are here as well, if any of you have lost your job thus far because of this COVID-19, this coronavirus, feel free to email me and I will be happy to send you a free practice test and a free study guide. Just because I know there's many people now that have plenty of free time on their hands, and what better time than to spend this studying and to further our career. So that's my goal there. But if you drop into the comments, when are you hoping to take your test? That is a question for you. So when are you hoping to take the test next? I will be interested to see that because I have I think that's the next slide coming up. Yes. So I have this next. I pushed the deadline back to April 30th. So end of next month. as our new deadline, and if we need to, we can push it back to May. I want to keep somewhat of the pressure on, because otherwise, say you've done a whole bunch of studying or January 1 through March, end of March here, and then life happens, you forget everything you learned, then you take the test, and you're really disappointed because you failed the test. And that's the last thing I want for any of you. So what I suggest is make sure that you have that you continue to study, continue to go in depth on these subjects. And in fact, what I'm going to be sharing here with you in just a few minutes, really, really important. So I think it'll also help you in this endeavor. Don't forget, when you do pass or if you fail, I'm interested either way. If you fail, if you use our materials, I want to know how I can do better, what I can do to make a better learning journey for you. I'm interested. It's a constant learning experience for me. So email your scores. We track this really, really closely. In fact, you're going to see some of the results of this stuff that we're tracking here. So email that to us, and it's really helpful. In fact, I use this to help train our prediction algorithm. So when you do take a practice test, it'll help us to know how well you are going to do on the real test. And I actually have some updates I want to make to that here soon. It'll also help me know where I need to improve the practice test. So if your scores are way out of line with a practice test, which is not very often, but if it happens, I want to know what I can do to make that better. So please email us your scores, and that's also certainly how you'll be getting your t-shirts. And I don't want anybody to miss out on their opportunity to get this awesome t-shirt. I showed you that in the video 2 weeks ago, and so last meeting, and so that's what I want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity there. So the other thing, and this is so important, is the project guide. So I've obviously written the study guide for the associate developer, and I don't remember, it's like at least 150 pages, maybe more. And my goal was to literally provide every bit of information somebody needs to get to be like they're doing pretty well in Magento development. Now, the study guide focuses on knowledge, but this project guide is literally a step-by-step A to Z on really getting your feet wet in Magento development. And so it's not only a PDF, a guide, like an ebook, but it also is a whole bunch of videos. And as I purposely did it like this, that I don't edit out my mistakes. I say I don't. There might have been one or two that I cleaned up, but otherwise I don't edit out these mistakes. And my goal is let me back up. I've worked through a lot of tutorials in my life, in almost every one of them, there's something that doesn't work. Now, whether it's just my computer, whether it's me, whatever it is, I don't know. And it's frustrating. So what if I, having already been down this road, done this stuff, what if I recorded these videos and left these mistakes in? And as such, you're able to see how to resolve these problems yourself. You're able to see how you can get through this. And more importantly, me as an example, what things am I trying? What things am I doing? What things work? What things don't work? So please, if you have free time here, which maybe some of you do, feel free to take advantage of this. That's why I'm putting this out there, is for you, for your success. So we're going to talk about what to do with your free time, because I know that at least some of you probably have some free time, and I want to make sure that I give you some suggestions to put you down the right track in your studying. So obviously we've recorded a whole bunch of videos. We've done our other meetings, and I suggest, reviewing those, taking advantage of that. But I want to talk about specific areas that you might want to spend extra time on based off of statistics. So based off of information I've already seen. But first, if you want to take a test at home, I wanted to recap this. If you were on the Slack channel, you saw some of this. But you will need if you want to take a test at home, which is a great way to do it, but you will need a good, stable internet connection. So Jonathan on the chat was talking about how he has lightning fast, but then it drops every once in a while, his internet connection. And so that would cause problems in the webcam feed going up to Crypterion and them not able to monitor your test results. You need to have a webcam, an external webcam. So not the one like you would have on your computer. You need to have an external one that like a USB webcam. And they say it has to have a 6-foot cord. I don't know if mine has a 6-foot cord, but whatever. And then it needs to be fairly quiet. And I say fairly quiet, like if we're working at home, we got probably kids running around. I work at home all the time, so I've kind of learned how to manage some of that. But especially for those maybe of you that are getting used to this work from home thing, that can be interesting. You don't want kids busting down the door, running in, and just coming to see daddy or mommy in the office. So that is important. So those three things are what is necessary. Let's catch up. So Neha said there's a complete lock in India. We'll set it for June. Okay. And I might even bump off the deadline till the end of June. I want to keep the pressure on because, again, if people don't study, don't take this test, it's the knowledge that's gained will decay a little bit. And that could be the difference between pass and failure. And I want to see everybody pass. Bhargav, good to meet you. Good to see you again. Welcome. Kazi, good evening. Well, good morning from Kansas City, but good evening to you. And Bat is on as well. Very good. It's wonderful having everyone here. All right, so I'm going to let you inside some interesting statistics. So a little bit of background here. With the practice tests, I do my very best to get scores on tests, on the real test. So if you take a practice test and then you go and sit for the real exam, please send me your score. We refund 25% of the amount for the practice test. We refund that back to you. It's so vitally important to me. It's my own quality control. So how can I improve? How can I do better? Plus, it's a way to give back to your other members of the community because we use that to help train our data set. So then you can, you're helping other people in this process as well be able to pass the test and really accurately know whether and how well they will do, and certainly whether or not they will pass. So this is so important. So anyways, we have this information, and again, doing everything I can to collect it. So what I thought I would do this morning is I went through and analyzed each one of these tests, the scores we have from them, and I looked at those who failed the test, and I looked at the average scores for where they struggled. Now, you could be different. The average doesn't always apply to everybody. In fact, I don't think it's always fair to apply the average to everyone. That we would call it stereotyping. And so, not necessarily ideal. But as a general rule of thumb, we can often learn something from averages. And in this case, I think we can learn a lot from averages. So, what I have said over and over again, and I want to reiterate now, is you need to evaluate yourself as you are studying. Is there an area of this test? Is there a particular objective that you do not feel comfortable in? That feels like it's new, feels like it's unknown, maybe a little bit scary to you. You've never done this before. Anytime you get those feelings, I suggest you write it down. This is an area that I'm struggling with. This is an area that I feel weak in. And when you do that, then go back and study that particular area. Because what we're going to see is that very thing not happening on these scores. What we're going to see is people actually not taking the time to study their weaknesses and instead just saying, it's not going to happen to me, and then they fail the test. So let's jump in with that in mind. So here are what I have seen are the difficult areas for the associate developer test. Customizing the Magento UI and admin HTML. I think if we raised our hands, quite a number of us are not the best at admin HTML. And yet, the associate developer sounds easy, sounds simple, sounds like a no biggie. We can easily pass that. There was somebody recently in our Slack channel talking about how they got the lowest marks on the admin HTML area. Right here, my friends, this is exactly what I'm talking about. So what are we expected to know in these areas? So the Magento UI is customizing the front end, customizing, like creating blocks, layout XML. This is not particularly difficult stuff. And that's why if you get into the project guide for the associate developer test, you're going to have a much better picture as far as how to do this. Now, we're not actually customizing the front end of the front end area. So what visitors would see as they browse the website. But what we are customizing is we're creating a block. We're using view models. We are creating, we're working with layout XML, etc. So, and that kind of dovetails into the admin HTML area. In my memory, there's not much talk about UI components, if at all, on the test, but there is talk about admin HTML. So creating things like a ACL.xml file, a system.xml file. So adding items to the store configuration, all of that is covered in this project guide. And it's not a sales push here because it's free. So it's a free resource, especially if you have been laid off, if you're struggling with some finances right now, my friends. It's free. Take advantage of it. I want to help you pass because, again, once you get associate developer certified, you're probably in the top 50% Magento developers worldwide. So you're already leaps and bounds ahead of where you might ever want to be. I mean, this is a good start. So Magento UI and admin HTML are the two areas that you really, really want to study extra on. And these are the two areas that, well, especially admin HTML, I'll just be really frank there, that people struggle with. The important thing is don't rely so much is the key word there. Don't rely so much on the internet for this stuff. You want to have at least a general framework, a general guideline of knowledge as far as how to do these things. Of course, you can use live templates. I saw Mark Schust put out something yesterday about live templates, which is great. So you can rely on some of that, but you need to have the general guideline, the general framework in your mind, because that's what Magento is testing. They're not testing specific syntaxes and, okay, is this correct syntax or not? And okay, the answer was actually that there was a XML error in this. That's not what they're testing. That's more memorization. They're testing the difference. For example, I don't think this is a real question, so this is to be good illustration. Testing the difference, for example, like what would be the difference between an obscure field type and a password field type in system.xml. Now, it would not be probably written like that, but ultimately, it would maybe talk about needing to safely store some information in the database. And you don't want to store it in plain text in the database. So, which type would you use, or something along those lines? And password would be one, obscure would be one. Who knows what the other two distractors would be? But in other words, it's testing the difference between password and obscure. So what is the difference? You need to know that because it's really, really important. It's that type of, hey, good morning, good evening, Jay, welcome, good afternoon, welcome, come on in. We're talking about the difficult areas for the associate developer test. And specifically, I was talking about system.xml and how understanding these general guidelines as far as what happens. For example, and we don't talk about this in the project guide, but do you know how to create a image field type in system.xml? So make sure you understand, you know how this stuff works. Let's move on. Whoa, I think we're starting to see a common trend here. Yes, my friends, we are. Admin HTML. For some reason, and I don't fully understand it, this is a particularly difficult area. And I think because it's new, it's different, and there's a good portion of developers who have started with Magento 1 and the transition to Magento 2. Hey, Pradeep, come on in, welcome. The transition to Magento 2 is not necessarily easy. UI components are a part of that. And what I have come to see with UI components is they seem scary at first. In fact, well, let me take a little break here. One thing I have come to see is that oftentimes, I'm not saying all the time, but oftentimes, those things that we hate on, those things that we disparage, are usually the things we don't understand. And I know that's pretty philosophical, but here's how it relates to UI components. I'm just going to be really frank with you. Back when I started getting into them, earlier in Magento 2 days, probably 2016, 2017, I thought they were the most horrible things ever. Anytime I saw something about UI components, I totally agreed. It was anything bad about UI components, I totally agreed. It was like, these things are horrible. I hate them. They're awful. They're useless. They're worthless. They're not extensible. They're impossible to understand. They're just the epitome of ridiculousness. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of problems with them. There's a lot of areas that might need to be improved with them. There's a lot of things that just are weird with them. But I realized through that process that I probably am actually hating on something that I don't understand. And through the years, as I have years, I say, well, I guess we're in 2020 now. Time flies. Isn't it amazing Magento 2 was released in like 2015? It's like out for like 5 years, 4 or 5 years. That's crazy. So as we go through this, it's important to say, okay, I don't understand this, and thus I will seek to understand it before I disparage it. I think this is an exact perfect illustration of what I'm talking about. Admin HTML for so many people we try to do away from it. In fact, I still see code out there. People are using I don't remember the specific names for them, the old blocks that are still somewhat available for Magento 1. They're still using those in Magento 2 for creating admin forms. I might say there can be a case for those, but it's really rare, and it'd be for like some crazy extreme customization. Otherwise, in at least 90% of the cases, the UI component will do the trick. So I say that, keep that in mind. Admin HTML and professional developer, it's all the more difficult. And let's extrapolate that out to checkout. Check out what's going on there. The checkout is UI components as well. And so there are some other interesting aspects of that. In fact, so just understanding the checkout. Checkout can seem big. It can seem crazy, difficult to work with. But the more I've worked with it, again, I'm not saying it's the best in the world. There's so many better checkouts out there. But the way it's built isn't necessarily bad. Now, you know what is bad? I'll just put this note out there. What I've seen is all the other, and hopefully, no offense here, but is all these other one-step checkout additions. I have really struggled with those simply because they make so many changes to the Magento checkout. And then anytime you install another module, like a new payment method, for example, I had, for example, CyberSource, and there was a one-step checkout I was working with. You literally had to rebuild the UI component structure for CyberSource in order to make it work with this other one-step checkout. So that can be a real pain, but it's good experience. So in that way, it's good. It's just very expensive for the client, and it's not necessarily, these one-step checkouts are not necessarily all they're cracked up to be. So I'm not hating on them in the slightest. It's just that there's more cost that's associated with it than we would originally think. And that's where this checkout stuff, it's so important that we are up to have a lot of knowledge on that. And I hope to be able to put out some more information in the future about what it takes to study for checkout, what it takes to study for admin HTML. But in the meantime, what I would highly recommend, and I don't have this in here, is mage2.tv. So put on by Vinay Kopp from Germany. Absolutely, probably one of the most brilliant people in the Magento space. One of the just extremely kind-hearted, incredible person. And so he's put together tons of videos, especially about UI components, but a whole bunch of other things for Magento. Mage2.tv. If you want to deep dive, if you want to learn, if you want to master a part of Magento, check out that material. It is bar none the best ever. So mage2.tv, I put that out there. All right, so continuing on. Frontend Developer. I think we're seeing some trends here, my friends. So static assets, I don't exactly know why that would be so low. I think that's a fairly small percentage of the test, and I should have put in the percentages on these here. With static assets, I think that's a fairly small percentage, but it's important then, as such, you need to get in. And I think it can seem like this magic, how these less files get from our module directory out and are compiling it into pub static. It's not magic. It's code that's freely available that you can step through and watch that process. And again, if you don't have a debugger going on your computer, you're missing out big time. So get in there, get that debugger going, get it, make sure you understand how to use it. In fact, it was just yesterday, I think I answered a question on Stack Exchange. And that was one of my big suggestions. Debug this. And then the person responded back and say, here's the log files. So no, that's not the point of my message. The point of my message is to get in there and use Xdebug. Again, that can seem scary, can seem hard to set up. But once you do, you'll know how to do it. You'll know the resources, and better yet, write down those resources for you. So next time, as you get a new computer, you'll know exactly how to do that. So step through that process of how static assets are created. And one of the easiest entry points, just as a hint for there, is I think it's pub static.php, if I remember correctly. Set a breakpoint there, because those static assets are routed through that file if they don't exist. So usually the Nginx rules or Apache rules check and say, hey, if they'll strip out the deploy version, pub static deploy _ version.txt. They'll strip that out, and then they'll check to see if that path actually exists. And if it does, it'll return it. So, but if it doesn't exist, it'll send it over to pub static, I think static.php. Set a breakpoint in that file. Step through that file line by line, and you're going to understand how this is created. Now, step over all the less compilation stuff, because there's a lot that goes on there, but you're still going to get the idea. Really, really good deep dive. And of course, JavaScript again. I don't think many UI components are covered on the front-end developer, but what is covered is certainly just JavaScript in general. How does this work? And so it's really good to work through the study guide, understand how this works. And the best thing ever is create little simple demonstrations, create little simple demos. In doing that, it's kind of becomes like a kata, where you're setting something up, like create a controller, create a layout XML file, create a block that uses a view model and a template. That's 4 or 5 files that you have to create there in order to render an endpoint. Do that. Just do that. And you're going to get faster every time you do that. So you're winning in the long run as well. So do that, set up, and then create a JavaScript file, link that file in, apply it to a specific element using the data mage init, and then create a script with a type of X Magento init. Use that like JSON-like syntax there. What's the difference between the asterisk for a selector versus an actual selector? How do you pass data into a JavaScript module? Things like that. So how do you reference a JavaScript module from another one? What's the purpose of require.js config? And how do you use that? What happens? Well, actually, back on static assets, what's the difference between developer mode and default/production mode? Those sort of things are really important in this. So get studying on as your JavaScript developer. And I just had to put this emoji in there. I think it's literally hilarious. UI components are, I bet if we took a poll, UI components would probably be the most hated aspect of any test, and probably of the Magento system. It's just how it is. But you can look at it, say, hey, most people are going to hate it. I don't have to hate it. In fact, I recently heard, well, actually it was a couple years ago, and it really stuck with me. Those that succeed in life are the ones who do what nobody else wants to do. What nobody else feels like doing. And it's those type of people that succeed. And I've taken that advice as much as I can to heart. And with UI components, it's no different. You will succeed if you tackle these areas that nobody else likes. People struggle with UI components. You see it right here in front of you. I have these statistics to prove that. UI components are tough. They're difficult. But as my dad always said, it's easy once you know it. Now, I don't know if that fully applies here. You Frank, it's still not 100% easy for me. But as I've gotten into it, as I've learned it, it's gotten a lot easier. So that is the key point on JavaScript. And after just taking it, I took it on March 3rd, which is March. Man, this time is flying. It's March 28th. And I took that test on March 3rd. Hey, welcome. Let's see here. Duke, it's good to have you in here from Vietnam. This is awesome. I love it. People all around the world. I love it. It's great. So UI components, really important to get in there and to study those. Build some sample UI components. VNI Cops Mage2TV goes into extensive detail on UI components. For, I think it's like 10 euros a month. You cannot go wrong with that. Professional Developer Plus. Again, look what we're seeing here, my friends. Look what we're seeing, UI components, as well as commerce features. UI components and commerce features took the lowest marks by far. People did really well on all the other subjects. UI components and commerce features. Commerce features are like I'm gonna get the related products rules is probably one of the biggest areas that people struggle there. It's and just rules in general. And content staging. That's right. Those three areas are the areas that you want to study. So there's, to my memory, there's not a huge amount of like deep dives onto there, but it's more surface level knowledge, and it's that people don't even seem to have there. So I work in our study guide to go through that, to go through each one of these areas, but I think if I remember correctly, in the example project with the study guide, it's not even like, I don't think there's even much example code for that, because it's not big deep dives into these areas. It's more surface level knowledge. So that should be the easiest stuff to gain. Commerce features, spend time on that. Again, it's this resistance, and I know from personal experience, it's like, I don't understand it, I don't know it, I don't want to get into it. But we're taking a test, and this stuff is on the test. So you got to face it. We got to get into it. We got to learn it, because if you learn it, you might be the only person in the office that knows how this stuff works. I think that's a path to success right there. So get in there, learn it, and of course, UI components. Solutions specialist. This one is, I always put this, it's probably one of the most difficult Magento tests. Architecture, Objective 2 and Objective 3. Magento features are the two most difficult ones. What we need to look at on architecture is those areas that you don't work with on a regular basis. It's those areas that are the ones that struggle. So for some people, it might be Magento Cloud. For some people, it might be the architecture. And it is a little bit technical of how this stuff works. And especially what the practical implications are, because again, as a solution specialist, you need to be a liaison. You need to be a mediator or a go-between between the merchant and the developer team. So developer team kind of speaks their own language. Merchant speaks their own language. So you need to be this person who can speak both languages. So that's where I think that becomes difficult on architecture. Magento features is difficult simply because there's a number of people who are taking the test who are not familiar with commerce, and the solution specialist must know a lot about commerce. And that's why I have, in the prep course, I have access to a commerce sandbox, your very own commerce sandbox, simply to be able to get up to speed on those features. But also, it's the practical application of this stuff. So whether open source or commerce, how do I apply it? What features are available in these different sections? And those who are maybe either in the C-suite or kind of higher level, even some project managers, can really struggle with this test because they're not working with Magento features all day long. Even sales, they are working with they're working with the merchant. They're advising on solutions, but they're not actually working on Magento regularly. Developers often have the easiest time with this test, particularly on, Objective 2. There's talk about Magento Cloud on there. On Objective 3, these features, and also Objective 5. 2, 3, and 5 are more developer friendly. 1 and 4 are more just e-commerce related solutions. So that's where these the hangups are for the solution specialist. So that is what I wanted to cover today, and I hope this was helpful information as far as what does it take to pass these tests. How can you? What are the common sticking points? Because I want to make sure that we can get over those sticking points. I want to make sure that we can eliminate those as causing problems. With that, couple of things. First, I always would appreciate if you haven't already, just click that subscribe button. You'll be notified when we get more videos coming out. I tell you what, last Saturday, I spent a good portion of the day, in fact, I'd say the majority of the day, shooting video for what I hope to be an absolutely hilarious video. I think you're going to love it. And so you won't know about that video coming out unless you click the subscribe button. So this is not clickbait or anything, but it make me very happy if you wouldn't mind subscribing to our this channel here. And also, of course, if you like this video today and some of the secrets that I kind of letting you into here, feel free to click the like button as well. That again makes me understand and know what resonates with people. And so that, of course, feel free to drop in the live chat if this is helpful or not helpful to you. That's great as well. But if you wouldn't mind, it just takes a split second here. We're on, just click the like button. That would be great. All right, so I am available now for a while, actually 20 minutes or so. If there are questions, I would do my very best to answer them and to share with you whatever I can. So this is an opportunity to be able to ask questions. So I already have a first question here. Niha, where can try for mock test? All right, so a couple of options. There is in every Magento U study guide, so you go to u.magento.com, there is a study guide there for there's a free study guide, and it's basically, that was the study guide that was used to write the Magento test. So you can go there, and at the bottom of every study guide, there is several practice questions, usually 2 to 3, maybe 4 questions. Those are actually questions that came from the writing of the test, but for whatever reason, they didn't get it made in. Maybe it was too many questions for a particular objective, or maybe there's something slightly wrong with it, whatever. They're still good questions. It's just they were not able to be made in, get into the test. So that's really important. Review those questions. Of course, I will put out there, I have written practice tests for all of the Magento tests except for order management. These practice tests are, so I've helped write 2 Magento tests and update a whole bunch of them. So my goal is to help you get a really good picture of what is involved with, or what this test is going to look like. So that's what I have done, and we've actually put in a whole bunch of information. So I built this testing engine, and I continually make updates to it, so it has like a predictor, really fairly well trained. We have a timing, so it also gives you your average time per question. A whole bunch of features like that my goal is to do everything possible to train you, as well as, of course, you can see the right and wrong answers at the end, but I advise against that. And so in fact, you now have to click a yes, I want to see those, simply because I'm trying to discourage people from looking at those, because then it turns into memorization, as opposed to, okay, here's the area that I'm weak in, and this is the area that I need to focus more of my study efforts on. That is better. Looking at questions is not as helpful. So it could be in the future I actually remove being able to see the right and wrong answers from questions, possibly. So I really want to make sure that these practice tests are used effectively. So I do know there's several other resources out there. I can't vouch for them and say how good or not good they are. So that would be up to you as far as whether you'd want to use those or not. Okay, Bat has a question. Is there a way to live reload knockout templates as reloading checkout is very headache for all? I love it. Yes, you are 100% right. It is. I love your terminology. It is very headache for all. Absolutely. You could not have said it better. So a couple of things there. First, I would suggest making sure your full page cache is completely enabled. You could, if you want, maybe to speed it up, depending on what type of disk you're using on your computer, make sure to use, if you don't have an SSD, you could use Redis for caching to make those reload processes faster. But beyond that, unfortunately, I am not aware of a way for live reload for JavaScript. It is obviously like Vue, has some live reload associated with it, but Magento JavaScript is not. Vue, unfortunately, it's working towards React, but it's not anything that's live reloadable. Then we have, obviously there's live reload for Sass, or less to an extent, but unfortunately not JavaScript. So your best bet is to do your best to speed up the reload times. So you could, unfortunately, there's just not a way to speed up loading JavaScript. You could, one thing to also make sure is that JavaScript is being, is that you have your static, how do I say this? Your HTTP requests can properly configured for static. So that would mean, like I talked about earlier, you want to make sure that Magento is not being hit unless necessary for that. So there's a little bit of configuration required, like your Apache rules or htaccess rules or Nginx rules, to make sure that it's going directly to the file system. As such, I think that's going to be about your best bet. Of course, making sure JavaScript minification is off. It should be off if you're in developer mode. Hopefully you're in developer mode, because then your assets, static assets, will be symlinked back into the module directory. So those would be a couple of things to check on if you for development in the checkout. Mikel, good to see you on again. So 2 questions talking about theme fallback system. If I create my layout template, overwriting a core module one, what should I do to keep my layout template updated? Okay, so I'm assuming when you say updated, we're talking about updates from Magento. Would that be correct? So you're wanting to make sure that as Magento updates, so from 2.3.4 to 2.3.5, then you would be how does that work with your templates, like a best practice there? Is that your question, or maybe I'm missing it there? And to the second question, I can answer that one. Why does your clock always show 8:50? That's a good question. Because it's out of battery. And in order for it to have battery, in order for it to work, I must put batteries in it. And the problems with batteries is they run out. And I have not figured out a way to hook it up to a outlet. So I leave it as in the no battery status. Yes, watch definitely has history associated with it. It is permanently out of battery. So I use my phone for telling time. I do not use my the clock back there. So let me, since I haven't heard back from Mikhail, I'm going to go ahead and answer with what I was previously thinking there. So overwriting Magento templates is something I suggest doing as minimally as possible for that very reason. And I see a lot of times where templates are overridden, and they don't have to be. They can be. We can use other methods like adding another block. One could get crazy in using JavaScript. That's probably a little extreme. But the goal is to say, okay, do I really have to override this? And one thing I always do when I override a block or override a template in general is I try to always put in comments as far as what I updated. Simply because I know, and I think a great example was back in Magento 1 when they added the form key to the payment step in checkout. That broke so many checkouts. It's reasonable security. We got to do it. So don't get me wrong there, but it caused a lot of problems. So what we had to do is we had to go and basically refresh add that form key back into the payment template. And so the fewer templates that have been updated there, the better. So then that did not break that checkout. So anytime we can avoid a layout or a template override, the better. But if we do, make sure to always notate what has been changed, unless it's just such a big change that, I don't know, it's basically a new template file. And at that point, I don't know, just do your best to make sure that everybody knows what happened. And the other nice thing about putting those comments in there is if you do code reviews, the person who's reviewing is not going to say, okay, here's a Magento template, what changed? They're going to see exactly what changed. It's going to make it easier. Yes, yeah. So right solution should be a method like plugin for the layout template. Yes. So at that point, you'd be possibly, unless I'm missing what you're talking about, you'd be swapping out likes choosing a different template. And you can obviously change the template, but again, the problem there is it kind of serves the same purpose. So I'm not really coming up with other good solutions other than what I suggest is just making sure to comment what has been changed in that file. Rizwan, good to see you on. A question related, but it's not certifications, related to PWA feature using Magento. What's the best or good one for PWA? Magento, PWA Studio, View Storefront. There's a lot, or Scanny PWA. There is a lot of PWAs out there. My guess is the industry is going to consolidate around the Magento PWA, but View Storefront, I think that's Deity. Maybe that's another one. I get confused sometimes. I have actually not played with the PWAs much. I've heard really good things about the View Storefront though, and something that is on my to-do list to be able to dig into. So I look forward to that opportunity, but time will tell. It's a lot of this stuff is still really early. I'm guessing in the next probably 2 years. By 2022, we should have a good, solid PWA solution, I'm guessing. And I would think it's going to be the Magento one, but time will tell there. Another question by Duke here. Where can I find available options to define the EAV attribute and its description? Okay, I'm not necessarily sure I'm following you there. So the EAV attributes are stored in the EAV attribute table. The options are stored, I think it's the EAV attribute option table. And so you can actually manually create that. You have to use the table type for use for the EAV attribute to load options from that table. So otherwise, I'm maybe not sure I'm following you. I'm kind of striking out here in that response in that question there. Any other questions? Be happy to answer them. We still have a little bit of time left. But yes, this has been a really, really wonderful experience for me, and I have very much enjoyed getting to hang out with you all in our Slack channel and watching and observing the conversations. It's been an incredible learning experience. And I look forward to hopefully we'll be able to do something like this next year. Problem is I don't have any other tests to take. Well, I guess I have order management. I don't know. We'll see if I do that one. But it was a great experience for me just to get through their study and to be able to go take the test and see how that process works. Bargav, who are the winners till now? I do not know off the top of my head. So I was hoping to be able to create like a Google Sheet so that I can share that out with everybody. So you can see kind of your rank and your score, but we have not had the availability to do that as of yet. So I'll probably do that here next week or so, get that out so you can see how it's looking. Because definitely looking forward to getting these shirts out. So just as a recap, that we are pushing off the deadline for the test taking until at least April 30th. And from what I'm seeing as I'm talking to people, it might be closer to June. So it's gonna be a little while before we get those t-shirts sent out, because I want to make sure that we give ample opportunity for everyone to take it. This whole coronavirus has kind of thrown a monkey wrench into a whole bunch of people's plans all over the world. And to be frank, taking a test is the least of anybody's concern at this point, which is a good thing. There's a lot bigger fish to fry, a lot bigger things to be concerned and watch out for, rather than taking a test. So the cool thing is, as you have free time, this is the opportunity to be able to be studying, to be preparing for that. Yeah. And again, as I've said earlier, and I reiterate now, if any of you have lost your job as a result of this coronavirus thing so far, email me, joseph@swiftauto.com, and I will be happy to share with you a study guide, get access to a practice test, because I want to do my part to help you out in this I'd literally call it a tragic situation. It's none of our faults, and it's just a problem. I guess you'd say it's a side effect of living in a global economy. It's helped us. It's been good for us in so many ways, but now we're kind of seeing a downside to this. So it's not necessarily ideal from that aspect, but we will make it through. It's good. I love seeing this camaraderie, this teamwork. And my goal is to do anything possible to further each one of you in this process. So I am not seeing any other questions coming in. So I want to wish every one of you a wonderful Saturday. If you are enjoying it from the inner confines of your house, as well, a wonderful Saturday. It's a great time to spend with your family, spend studying, whatever you're going to do. And again, if I could just mention this, clicking that like button is a wonderful way to say thank you for this. I certainly appreciate it very much. So anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, wonderful rest of the year. Stay well, stay safe. And I look forward to seeing these scores come in. Don't forget to email them to learning@swiftauto.com. I look forward to seeing those scores come in, and I'll keep you updated on the Slack channel and maybe through our email list. We'll see. I don't want to spam people, but I will keep you updated as far as when the deadline is, and because I take care of people. So I want to make sure everyone has ample opportunity to get that t-shirt. So we're going to do that. Anyways, it has been wonderful spending this time with you, and I appreciate this opportunity to get to know you all. Don't stop studying. Keep interacting in our Slack channel, but this will be our last meeting for this year, and I look forward to maybe we'll do this again next year. It's been a great experience. So, anyways, appreciate you all being a part. Thank you, and hope you have a wonderful, wonderful year.